For 7 decades, one weapon has defined who controls the Pacific Ocean. Not a missile, not a submarine, not a satellite, a ship. The American aircraft carrier. There are 11 of them. They are each longer than the Empire State Building is tall. And for 7 decades, no military on Earth has figured out how to stop one. Until recently, that may have changed. In the middle of a desert, 2,000 kilometers from the nearest ocean, satellite cameras have found something no one expected. Full-scale replicas of American warships, sitting in the sand, covered in impact craters. China has been practicing. The question is, what exactly are they preparing to do? The images appeared without warning. In 2021, commercial satellite companies, the same services used by real estate developers and shipping companies, photographed something in China's Xinjiang province that didn't belong there. In the middle of the Taklamakan Desert, one of the most remote and hostile environments in Asia. Someone had built ships, not models, not props, full-scale outlines, hundreds of meters long. Military analysts in Washington, London, and Tokyo pulled the images. They ran the measurements. The dimensions matched an American Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. One structure matched the silhouette of a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier. Someone had built American warships in a Chinese desert, and then, judging by the craters, fired missiles at them. The question was no longer what China had built. The question was what China was expecting to face. To understand what China is doing in that desert, you need to understand what an aircraft carrier actually is. Not technically, strategically. An American carrier battle group isn't just a ship. It's a floating Air Force base. It carries 70 to 90 aircraft. It deploys with a ring of destroyers, submarines, and support vessels. It can strike targets 1,600 kilometers away. It projects force without needing permission from any country to use their airspace. And here is the part that matters. The United States has 11 of them. The rest of the world combined has roughly 20. And most of those are smaller class carriers operated by allies. This is not a balanced equation. Since 1945, every major American military operation, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, was launched under the shadow of carrier air power. It is the single most important reason the US can fight wars on the other side of the planet. And it is the single biggest military problem China cannot solve. Because the moment China moves aggressively toward Taiwan, toward contested islands, toward any territory it claims in the South China Sea, those carriers move. They are already there. They rotate through the Pacific on a permanent basis. They are the answer America gives to every question that begins with, what if China decides to? For China's military planners, the carrier isn't just a weapons system. It is the lock on every door they want to open. Here's what China's military leadership understands about the Pacific. The first island chain, a string of territories running from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines, sits between China's coastline and the open ocean. And almost every major island in that chain is either a U.S. ally, a U.S. partner, or under disputed claim. In a conflict, that geography becomes a cage. China's navy would have to push through or around that chain to project power into the broader Pacific. American carriers could operate beyond it, launch aircraft over it, and control the airspace that China's fleet would have to move through. Military planners in Beijing have a term for this situation. They call it anti-access/area denial, A2/AD. It means, how do you keep an enemy military out of a space you want to control? For China, the answer is not to build more carriers. They have 2. The US has 11. That race is already lost. The answer is to make the carrier irrelevant. Or better still, to make the carrier a liability. If you could convince an American commander that sending a carrier into a disputed zone meant a realistic chance of losing a 100,000-ton ship and 5,000 personnel in a single strike, would they send it? That is the question China's military has been trying to answer for 20 years. And that desert in Xinjiang is part of the answer. The weapon China built to solve this problem had never been built before. A ballistic missile is designed to follow a curved arc through the upper atmosphere before descending on its target. Since World War II, they've been used to hit cities. Airfields, fixed installations, things that don't move. No one had ever built one to hit a ship, because it's almost impossibly difficult. A carrier battle group doesn't sit still. It travels at 30 knots, roughly 56 kilometers per hour. It changes course constantly. By the time a missile launched from Chinese soil reaches the ocean, the ship it was aimed at has moved. You're not trying to hit where the carrier is, you're trying to hit where the carrier will be. China solved this problem with the DF-21D. The missile uses a combination of over-the-horizon radar, satellite targeting, and a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, a warhead that can adjust its course during descent to track a moving ship. It has a reported range of 1,500 kilometers. At that distance, a carrier would have perhaps 12 minutes of warning. Western analysts called it a carrier killer. The US Navy had no confirmed defense against it, but building the weapon was only half the problem. The other half was harder. How do you practice hitting something you're not allowed to shoot at? But here's where the Desert program reveals something the missile itself never could. The Taklamakan Desert solves the testing problem in ways that open ocean cannot. At sea, missile tests are expensive, visible to foreign satellites, and risk exposing the missile's guidance signature to enemy intelligence. In a desert, you control everything. China built targets at the scale of real warships. Some analysts believe the structures are outfitted with sensors, instruments that record impact location, velocity, and angle of descent. Each strike generates data. Each data point makes the next strike more accurate. But what the satellite images revealed in 2021 went beyond simple target practice. Analysts noticed track-like structures near the mock carriers. Rail systems. The targets could move. China wasn't practicing how to hit a ship at anchor. It was practicing how to hit a ship running evasive maneuvers at combat speed. That is the difference between a weapons program and a war plan. And the implications reach beyond the Pacific. Because if the DF-21D works as designed, if China can reliably hit a moving carrier at 1,500 kilometers, then the fundamental assumption that has governed US military planning since 1945 no longer holds. American carriers do not become useless, but they become risky, and risk changes decisions. This has happened before. In the early 20th century, the battleship was what the aircraft carrier is today. The defining naval weapon, the measure of a nation's military seriousness. Empires were built on the credibility of their battleship fleets. Then, on December 7, 1941, a Japanese carrier launched 353 aircraft at Pearl Harbor. In 2 hours, 5 American battleships were sunk or capsized. In weeks, 2 British capital ships were sunk by Japanese aircraft in open water. The battleship era ended not with a treaty, but with a single strategic demonstration. A new weapons system had made the old one obsolete. China's military historians know this story. They also know that the US Navy recognized the carrier's dominance before anyone else, pivoted aggressively, and built the most powerful carrier fleet in history. What Beijing is calculating now is whether history is about to turn again, not whether the carrier can be sunk. Any weapon system can be destroyed if you throw enough at it. The real calculation is this: Can you make the political cost of deploying a carrier higher than the political cost of not deploying it? Because if China can credibly threaten to destroy a carrier, even if the threat is never executed, the carrier stops being a tool of deterrence, and American power in the Pacific depends on that deterrence holding. So what is China actually doing in that desert? It's not hiding a secret navy. It's not practicing deception. It's doing something more calculated than either. It's trying to change the math, all of which exists specifically to counter what China has built. Both sides are preparing for a conflict neither officially wants. And in a competition like that, the desert ships are not the story. They are the signal. The question is whether we understand what they're signaling, and how much time remains to build the systems that might make them irrelevant. If this is the kind of story you want to understand, subscribe to FaultLine.